Today on The Report, 5 people are charged with murder in a warehouse explosion.
The Artemis II crew returned to Earth safely.
Trump calls out Pope Leo for his comments on an AI-generated post.
Dinosaur auctions are causing an uproar for researchers and scientists. The Report starts now. Welcome back to The Report. I'm Chrissy Washington.
I'm Jerilee Martinez.
And I'm Sergio Gonzalez. Stay in the loop and get updated on campus news by following us on Titan TV's Instagram and TikTok account at Titan TV CSUF.
5 people, including a former lieutenant, have been charged with murder from a grand jury indictment on April 10th in an illegal firework warehouse explosion in Northern California that killed 7 people in July of 2025. Samuel Machado, former Yolo County Sheriff's Department lieutenant, was one of the 5 people charged. He illegally stored more than 1 million pounds of fireworks at his property and used his position at the sheriff's office to evade scrutiny as the operation grew. Yolo County Deputy District Attorney Clara Nabity said a total of 8 people faced 30 charges, including murder and insurance fraud. Machado's wife, Tammy Machado, was also arrested but was released after posting bail. She faces charges of mortgage fraud, filing a willfully wrong tax return, and endangering a child by storing illegal explosives next to a family pool. Others charged include Kenneth Chi, Order of Devastating Pyrotechnics, Jack Lee, the operations manager for Devastating Pyrotechnics, Gary Chan Jr., and Douglas Tolfelson, who all face murder charges. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I have never heard of anything like this. I know that there was that man who set that fire at the Kimberly Clark warehouse. But I think an explosion of 1 million pounds, that's a lot of fireworks. 1 million pounds of fireworks is a lot of fireworks that I've never heard of before. So how do you guys feel about it? It's a little crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I have questions because if you're not Disneyland, what are you trying to do with 1 million pounds of fireworks?
Right.
But no, I'm definitely just kind of like almost at a loss of what exactly was just going on here. And in the sense of the Machados, they are very clearly just kind of like stacking them everywhere. And child endangerment is very, that's bad.
Yeah.
But just, I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of question marks. I'm seeing a lot of why was this happening? Machado seems to have also just kind of abused his power at the police department. And I guess he was just kind of using his own ways there too. So that in itself is just another issue that we've kind of seen a common trend of just overall. But it's scary. And then all these murder charges as well are just wow, fireworks?
Right.
You almost wonder what did they want to transpire there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting story to hear about what their plan was. And I mean, I don't know if it was just let's collect all these fireworks, see if we could kill people. I don't know what their mentality was at that point, but I mean, especially endangering a child, even close to a pool. I mean, you will never know who is capable of just doing these horrendous acts. And it makes me wonder, should we be observing a little bit more? Mm-hmm. It's kind of a questionable thing to kind of start thinking about.
Yeah, to that point of, not knowing people's intentions, you really never know what people are doing in their own house. Mm-hmm. And my question is, if there's fireworks being stored next to a pool, are they outside? I'm picturing TNT, outside by the pool. And I'm I just don't know, what the goal is. I've literally never heard of this before. It makes me question where they were holding the fireworks. Like you said, why they had so many if they're not Disneyland. I just don't understand. And I think what really gets me is I understand that the police sometimes have a tendency and of course there's abuses of power in all organizations, but we do see that happen kind of more so with law enforcement. And what's interesting is, were the fireworks so serious that you would endanger your job and use your job to,
exactly.
It's so odd to me. I've literally, I'm so confused.
My question is, speaking of fireworks, illegal, and then like, you know, like back in like 4th of July, like if you have illegal fireworks, don't you have to pay like an 1,000 fine? So how come it's kind of like, oh, he was part of like the sheriff's department, how come they could do all these type of stuff, but why can't the common people too? Like, it's very controversial what they're doing.
That's exactly.
Why?
The success of Artemis II marks a major step towards returning humans to the moon for the first time since the aforementioned Apollo 17 mission. The third flight of the series is expected to launch sometime next year, with plans to test the gear that will hopefully send astronauts back to the lunar surface.
I don't know, has anyone have seen the when Artemis II the crew kind of came back?
I think I saw them. I like was walking home and I made sure to like check the time, and I think it was maybe like 30 minutes before they were supposed to like splash down. And I saw this like comet looking thing, and I was like, well, it's the middle of the day, like I'm pretty sure that's probably them. I was just like, the direction I was facing, I was like, San Diego's not that way. So I was like, I don't know like if that was them or not, but I'm like almost positive it was them, because it was literally like 30 minutes before they were supposed to touch down. So I think I did.
I see. I was disappointed because I wanted to see it, and then I ended up in about like a 30-minute drive that happened to happen right around that time. So then I went to watch the newscast after, and that was pretty cool because you could see them leaving and all that. But I mean, for me personally, I was honestly amazed throughout the entire trip. I was invested. I was looking at social media feed all the time, all the different photos that they were submitting. That was just like incredible.
Yeah.
And the fact that everyone's mentioning or like kind of saying like, oh, like this has to be AI. I'm like, no, it's not.
Right.
Like, we need to stop that thinking and realize like this is like true like mastery that's like happening right in front of us. Like this is something we've never seen. But I feel like it's super cool to see. I'm a little disappointed I didn't see it in the sky, but just in tracking everything, I feel like it's just really exciting. And also to think that like this is Artemis 2 and they're planning a 3, 4, 5. So each step is going to be that much further, and then like I believe the fourth one is what gets us. It is people will be walking on the moon again. So I'm really excited to see that transpire. I'm excited to see who they even choose, because I know the whole world fell in love with these current astronauts. It's just really exciting. Like, I don't know, NASA is just so cool.
Yeah, I love space. I have a NASA sticker on my MacBook, and every time I see it, I'm like, oh my God, I love NASA. I think the fact that like, I know I mentioned this when we did the like ocean life story, and I think another story I mentioned this, but like space, it's just so cool. And I think that the more we explore things, I think the more we learn about like the world and ourselves. And you know, we wouldn't have GPS if we never went to the moon, and you know, if we never went to space, we wouldn't have Wi-Fi. Wouldn't literally. There's so many things that we have space to think and space exploration to think. And they did an awesome job. And like you said, I think we really like fell in love with these astronauts. And I think it's cool that they're just so admirable and they're so like qualified to do this. And I think it was a really great team. So I'm very happy they made it home safely. I feel kind of like bragging rights that they touched down in the Pacific Ocean. I'm like, oh, they came to San Diego? Like, they're
Right
so
in our
close to home.
territory.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm just really happy for them. Really excited for us as a species. And yeah, I'm excited to see, like you said, like 3, 4, and 5, and kind of what transpires over time and what they do in the future.
I've only seen like videos, especially there was one video where they were actually outside their station and how quiet spaces actually was. And it sounds very cool, but kind of terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
But I kind of love how, you know, all of this chaos, we actually get to hear some interesting points, especially space exploration, and learning that they're actually doing more missions, including Artemis 3, 4, and 5. Like, that's pretty cool. And I mean, till next year, like, that's like half of well, you know, what we expected, especially like previous like years. I mean, since 1972, we haven't had any exploration other than sending like rovers and machinery back to like different planets like Mars and everything like that.
So it's kind of cool to see like humans going out there in space again.
Pope Leo responded to the U.S.-Israel conflict with Iran by expressing his opposition to the war, emphasizing how war is morally wrong and destructive. He also highlighted the importance of, quote, promoting peace, end quote. He added to his stand against the war how leaders are causing unnecessary suffering to innocent civilians, how the world needs peace, and how, quote, Jesus rejects war. No one can use to justify war, end quote. His remarks were interpreted as an indirect criticism of Trump's war policies. President Donald Trump publicly responded to Pope Leo's claims as, quote, weak on crime and, quote, terrible for foreign policy, end quote. Trump also added how the Pope is too, quote, political and liberal, end quote. Experts claim this is an unusual interaction between the U.S. president and the Pope. Pope Leo pushed back against comments made by Trump, expressing, quote, no fear of the Trump administration, end quote, and vowed to keep up his appeals for peace that he claims are rooted in the gospel, presenting his plea as not a political opposition, but as a moral and spiritual obligation to speak up. At the same time, Trump posted an AI image depicting himself as Jesus that drew major backlash from his own supporters. The post has since been deleted after numerous retaliations. We always kind of joke that it's something new every week, and this is another level. I don't really have to explain myself much here of just what exactly Trump is just doing that's just so like, okay, like, you do you, buddy, but we're using AI, we're comparing ourselves to Jesus, and we're attacking the Pope?
How that makes sense? I am just so flabbergasted, but not even. He's a very predictable man at this point of what he is capable of doing, sending AIs that he is God himself and making petty remarks on the Pope, which is kind of controversial, but even far more petty is that he was willing to defund just Catholic fundings, Christian fundings, religious purposes fundings, which I thought was just like, wow, like if you can't even make a joke or if a Pope is telling you to kind of not do those type of things, you know, even Jesus, and he's right, the Pope said, you know, Jesus is not for wars. I don't think Jesus would be happy with what's going on here, and what Trump is doing is just like a little child that's having a tantrum.
How do I say this tactfully? I just think he's so insane and silly. And the layers of this, like you guys said, where it's like you're attacking the Pope, like, first of all, like they said, like this is very unusual for the President of the United States to be literally beefing with the Pope. Mm-hmm. And I find it interesting that this kind of shows to me that there's no kind of real like thoughts being thought, because that week on crime, they say the same thing about Gavin Newsom all the time. They say the same thing about Karen Bass. They say the same thing about Mamdani and just other political figures in the country. I don't feel like that applies to the Pope because he doesn't actually have, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like he's not weak on crime. Mm. He doesn't have anything to do with crime. That's Trump's job, kinda. And I think that it's really just very ridiculous. And his response to the AI was that he thought that he thought the AI made him like a Red Cross like nurse or something. And I'm like, have you never seen like portrayals of Jesus before with like the red, like that's very obviously what that is. And like I want to say that it was just a lie and like a cop out because he didn't want to admit to it being Jesus for real. But honestly, I wouldn't put it past him to not actually know and to have actually thought that, you know. So it's very embarrassing. And for this to be, you know, we're heading into, and we've been heading for the past 10 years, into a sort of like Christian kind of nationalist vibe in this country. Mm-hmm. And you would think that if we're trying to not have separation of church and state and uphold these Christian values, you would think that the president wouldn't be doing this, but yet here we are. So it's very embarrassing, very hypocritical, very silly, ridiculous, and I think beefing with the Pope is just, I don't think that he's too liberal. I, in fact, think he's a lot less liberal than Pope Francis. So it's it's crazy to me
Yeah.
that he would even say that.
I'm like, a person can pick and choose their battles, but as someone like President Trump, who chooses to preach like Christianity and all that, like to attack the Pope suddenly. I mean, we don't have to go in depth on how insane that is, but also I feel like it's just more so kind of him making people realize, like, hey, like, it does not matter who it is. Like, if you're opposing him, like, he will oppose you. That's just who he is.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like the most religious figure that
Has
is
ever
on our
existed,
globe.
literally,
Yes.
yeah.
It's flat out like ridiculous, and like, especially considering pretty much the vast majority of his supporters are heavily Christian and into religion. So a lot of them are turning on them, and which is obviously like, okay, a little too late.
Right,
but
right.
it's, I don't know. I just think he's continuing to dig himself in a hole.
Yeah.
And you talk about just how this country has changed over the last 10 years, and it's just, I mean, it's disappointing. There's not much else to say.
I mean, has a president ever done that to a pope in recent years?
It has to be the first,
I
right?
This is the first, right?
I've
Okay.
never.
Over AI.
Obama definitely did. Right. It's crazy. We are in interesting times.
You guys, Trump is Jesus now, according to AI.
Right? Something like that.
Gross. On April 1st, a near-complete skeleton of a triceratops named Trey was sold for around $5.5 million on an online auction house, Jupiter, owned by musician and producer Pharrell Williams. Trey is now one of the many dinosaur skeletons, alongside Stegosaurus, Ceratosaurus, and T-Rex specimens sold at various auction houses, where billionaires, celebrities, and entertainment businesses bid egregious amounts of money to own their own dinosaur specimens. However, paleontological communities are wishing to see the auction house trend go extinct, with 2,000 members from the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology sending open letters to high-profile auctions to cease the dinosaur remains auctions and to donate to institutions. The professor of paleontology and evolution at the University of Edinburgh, Steve Brusatte, expressed his feelings on the recent Triceratops auction. Quote, "This auction doesn't make me angry, but it does make me feel particularly sad. I do feel a little bit of world weariness," end quote. While countries like South Africa and China are implementing strict laws to restrict fossil sales, the attention of auction houses continues to produce the public's growing interest in dinosaurs and paleontology. I love dinosaurs, guys. This is a very interesting story. I feel like it's a similar kind of situation with like ancient Egyptian like excavations and kind of digging up pharaohs and things like that. I understand the just the idea behind not wanting the auctions, because I think the purpose, it's a blessing that we even have these fossils still. And I think the fact that we have people and organizations and institutions that can study them and actually have had the education to pick them apart and kind of understand them, I think that's really important. So I feel like when we sell them to these billionaires and Pharrell and all his friends, I think that kind of does hamper that a little bit.
I think so.
How do you guys feel about it?
Oh,
You can go ahead.
it is a very interesting thing that we do. Actually, I just found that out. Like, we could, purchase dinosaur fossils, which I thought that was quite, it should be put in museums for like children who love dinosaurs to experience what it's like. And now that we have like we're seeing newer fossils, we're digging newer fossils, and exploring more about it and just giving it to these billionaires that are just probably going to hang them on the wall, not even as if it was an art, knowing that that's history itself. So I'm really kind of like mixed with the whole sales thing. I really don't think that we should have these type of things going on. Like, they should be restrict laws regarding it about those sales. And I mean, even celebrities are trying to buy off them. Like Pharrell, I'm just like, why would you want them?
Yeah.
I mean, like, unless the purpose is like if you own or you open up like a museum for your own, then yes, that could be for research purposes. But if you're going to put that in your house and not let the public see it, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Like, I understand the millionaires, like their infatuation with wanting something like that. But at the end of the day, when you put it on paper, if you have the decision to put it into a museum that can be very educational, and that, like you mentioned, like children can see it, paleontologists can kind of get a jump on like some other things as well, to where like they can maybe discover new things regarding like certain dinosaurs, or a billionaire just kind of being like, hey, like my mansion has a little bit of empty space. I could use like a $5.5 million Triceratops. So, like I understand that, but when you put the two and two together, I do think the better outcome would be like science and all that. And I mean, who wouldn't want to see that in a museum though?
Right.
But I mean, I completely understand the paleontologists, like their perspectives, because at the end of the day, I mean, like one, that's their passion. Two, I mean, as I mentioned, like you can just do so much more with that, and like that's exactly what their profession kind of entails. Of like, hey, like we have a new discovery. I want to check this out, see if we can discover anything new, and then instead it's just going to, I guess, music producers or just whoever. I mean, Pharrell is awesome artist. Don't get me wrong,
but like, and I didn't know. What's interesting is that I didn't know he had his own auction house. I guess that's what he was hiding under his big hats. I don't know. If I was Trey, I don't know how I would feel about being hung up in someone's house or propped up in someone's house. Because I think the thing with dinosaurs specifically that's so different from all the other animals that we've had in the world, they're just completely extinct. We've never, ever seen them. The only thing that we have to remember them by really are their fossils. So I think the more that we can study them and educate ourselves on them, because there are literally people out there who say that dinosaurs didn't exist. And I don't understand how you can come to that conclusion when we literally have their fossils. So I think the fact that we have them and we can study them is the most important aspect of all of this. So like I said, when we sell them to people, it just kind of defeats the purpose of digging them. You know, someone spent time digging up that whole entire Triceratops. So the fact that it's just going into someone's house, I think is a bit of a waste.
I agree.
And that wraps up with our recent news of today.
Make sure to stay tuned for more news, views, and information.
Don't forget to follow at Titan TV CSUF on Instagram to stay updated with our weekly episodes.
We'll see you on the next episode of The Report.